All right, welcome to the Young Turks on a huge day of news, both for us and for the country. Cenk Ugran and Kasparin with you guys. And so we're gonna launch something on the show in a minute that I want all of you guys to hopefully participate in for reasons that you'll see in a second. But I want you to also know about things that are coming up later on the program. So I know some of you just get certain clips or episodes of the show. You get the whole 2-hour show because I don't want you to miss what we're gonna talk about in regards to Bob Woodward's book. We're gonna have angles on that you're not seeing anywhere else. I gotta be honest with you, there's gonna be a number of told you moments there, absolutely confirming what we've been saying on the show for nearly 2 years now. And then in the Kaepernick story, we're gonna explain why the right wing and Fox News in particular are in a panic, and they should be. Why Nike's move to have Kaepernick be one of their top endorsers and spokespeople is monumental. It's a sea change in America, okay? We're gonna explain why that's later in the program. If you don't get the whole show, really easy, as we're about to explain at length here, become a member and you can get it all at $4.99 per month, and that's at tyt.com/join. Obviously, Kavanaugh is gonna be up first once we get to the news. First, before I go into the membership drive, how you doing, Casper?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
I'm excited about the show. That Woodward story is my favorite story of the day.
Nah, it's chock full of amazing anecdotes and terrible things that were said about Trump, terrible things that Trump has said about other people.
Yeah, I like drums. You like drums too. You know
Come
it.
on, you know it. Don't even pretend you don't. You like drums. Okay,
it's gonna be good.
Indeed. All right, so let's get started. First of all, I have an announcement. That's always fun. Second of all, we're doing a membership drive. Anna's dancing. Let's take Anna. All right, just calm down. All right. So, what is this? Well, some of you guys already know membership, and you know how the whole show works. So we got some of you might just see it on YouTube or Facebook or Hulu and all these different platforms that we're on. And you might see it one clip at a time, but you know the show is 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern live every day, tyt.com/live. That's okay, you don't have to catch it live. You can catch the Young Turks and all of our shows if you're a member. So that's tyt.com/join to become a member. But what we're kicking off today is a drive to get to 100,000 members. Now we're gonna do some things that are extraordinary here and very out of the ordinary. We're gonna have radical transparency. We're gonna actually show you how many members we have.
What?
Okay.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Yes. Now, the reason why I say that, Edwin gives me, oh, you're a dog? Okay. All right. So, almost no one in the industry does that. We're gonna show it to you down to the person, down to the actual count, and we're gonna keep on showing it to you. And then, by the way, we're also gonna tell you that our goal is impossible. But we have done the impossible a number of times. So I believe in you guys, I believe in us, and everybody that works here that we can get there. So tyt.com/join. Do we have the thermometer? Can I see that? So the campaign is be on the left side of history. I'm gonna explain why in a second. The number of paying subscribers we have right now is 27,661 as we go live on air now. We are going to try to reach 100,000 by the end of the year.
Whoa.
If you do the math on that, that is extraordinarily difficult, okay? But I believe in all of us, like I said, we're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. And so what do you get? If you've never heard of it, it's basically like a progressive Netflix. I'm gonna get into a little bit more detail in a minute about what you get for it. But what are we doing in the membership drive? We're gonna keep bringing you different videos about progressive positions and defending progressive positions and also going on the offense. So whenever there's misinformation, every once in a while we will release a video that is specifically designed and it's tightly produced to say that you can share with your aunts, uncles, neighbors, etc. Hey, Medicare for all, you hear on CNN or Fox News that it's expensive. Now let me show you what the reality is and how much it saves the country. And on for all the progressive positions, why higher wages for the average American makes sense. And guys, overall, 2020 is coming. And the progressive wing of the Democratic Party must be defended. And we are the ones that are going to do that defense and offense, by the way.
So one of the things that's stood out to me quite a bit since Trump's election especially is even though you have news outlets who claim to be the resistance against Trump, every single news outlet that I've personally come across is afraid to be progressive, to promote progressive ideas, to share what they genuinely think if they are progressives. Progressive voices, especially when it comes to some of these Justice Democrat candidates, have been silenced, have been censored in the media, and we've been the only ones who have very aggressively endorsed progressive candidates, and we do it in a way where we show that we're unafraid to share who we really are with our audience. Now, at the same time, in order for us to thrive and continue doing that, and in order to have an even louder message, we need to remain independent. And the best way to do that is to rely on you guys. I don't want to rely on outside funders. I want to rely on our members, period. You guys are the ones who get to control the message. And you believe in a progressive message, which is why we want you guys to have more of a voice in what we do.
Yeah, so let me just add one quick thing to that. That's really important. Look, we then become a rock and we become an immovable object if we're dependent on you guys alone. Thomas Jefferson talked about how democracy should be dependent on the people alone. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't take other forms of revenue in terms of advertising, different platforms, et cetera, but you see what's going on with YouTube, Facebook, and all the other platforms, and you see that it is an uncertain ocean out there. But if we have 100,000 members, that is our Independence Day. And that means nobody can move us off of this. Sad day for them. You know, if this pulls out or that pulls out or this insider doesn't like what we're saying or that insider wants to do something else. Sad day for them. Once you have that, you have progressive Netflix locked down. You get all the shows, Anna's show, No Filter, John's show, Damage Report, are all podcasts within the network. You've got Aggressive Progressives, Old School, our post game after the show here. You got the entirety of the Young Turks, and they'll never be able to take it away. And as the 2020 election heats up, I mean, you saw what we did in 2018. We backed all those wonderful progressive candidates, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Andrew Gillum, all the people who won, but we also backed the people who lost, and we're proud of that because we fight for our ideas and our principles, even if it's risky. And we get to that safe haven of 100,000 subscribers, and no force on earth can take that away from progressives. So just in terms of what do you get in terms of content, let me just show you real quick. And this is a relatively new feature that we put up. Some of you are already familiar with it. $4.99, it used to be $10. For $4.99, you're getting access to TYT member shows, all of our shows, including extras, post games and extra, just for the members, special behind the scenes content. I recorded a new one today. Please check that out. The opportunity to interact with us as celebrity guests during our TYT town halls. That's just for members. You get to ask us any question you want. You get members only merchandise and discounts at shoptyt.com. Now, look, we would love it if you sign up at the old price and stay at the old price because it helps us become independent media, and it is really, really important. So for the guys paying $10 a month, we have insider packages that's called TYT Activists. Some of our town halls are only for the activists. And that's important because you guys support us thoroughly and we want to have your back, okay? You get exclusive TYT swag bags. I got recognized on shirt alone when I had my beard on. I talked about it in the behind the scenes today. So you get a lot of positive comments about the shirts to begin with. You get first access to virtual and actual live events. So you'll be able to get tickets before anyone else does. We'll be moving those around a little bit from time to time, those membership privileges, and hopefully add to them as well. And then once we get to those numbers that we're talking about, we can then continue to grow and add more and more shows. From there on, it's gravy. You want a progressive show, we get a couple more members, we get another progressive show and another, and we build upon that. But we've got to build this rock first. So tyt.com/join, let's all do it together.
Yes.
Boom, okay. So we will be updating you throughout today's show and throughout all these shows on where we stand on the thermometer. And what is exciting about this, guys, even if you don't care about the Young Turks or you don't even like the Young Turks, is either way, you're gonna get to find out how we do. It is going to be incredibly public and no one else takes risks like this. But we do it because that's how we roll. We take risks when it comes to backing progressives. We take risks on air. That's because we're here to fight for you guys.
Can we look at the thermometer one more time?
Okay.
I want to just take a look.
Okay,
all
now.
Right, let's make note. Okay, 27,661. All right.
All right, now.
Can we get 30,000 by the end of the show? I believe in you, okay? I believe in
Well, that would be something. But I like how bold Anna is. That's why she sits in that seat.
Bold progressives. Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
All right.
All right, let's get going. Let's do the news.
All right. The first day for the Senate confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh has begun, and a number of things happened during the first day that I want to touch on today. First off, there were a number of protests that took place, but the loudest protest was actually conducted by Senate Democrats. Now, understand that Democrats have very little power in preventing the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, but one thing the Democrats were asking for from the get-go was access to extensive files, records, documents pertaining to previous judgments that Kavanaugh has made. And Republicans have fought them tooth and nail on that very subject. Now, what you're about to see is how it all unfolded on the first day of the confirmation hearings, and it did get pretty dramatic. Take a look.
To serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed.
Regular order, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleague, Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman, we received 42,000 documents that we haven't been able to review last night, and we believe this hearing should be postponed.
Mr. Chairman, if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Directly from Judge Kavanaugh and later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to the chair to recognize myself or one of my colleagues.
You're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to be recognized on your sense of decency and integrity. Even the documents you have requested, Mr. Chairman, even the ones that you said, the limited documents you have requested, this committee has not received. And the documents we have, you, sir, have labeled committee confidential. They should be transparent. This committee, sir, is a violation of even the values I've heard you talk about time and time again. The ideals that we should have. What is the rush? What are we trying to hide by not having the documents out front?
On the integrity of the documents we've received, there really is no integrity. They have alterations, they have oddities, attachments are missing, emails are cut off halfway through a chain, recipients' names are missing.
Sir, we just got a document dump last night of over 40,000 pages. I would venture to say not one senator here has had time to read through those 40,000 pages.
Okay, so just quickly for context, Mitch McConnell was iffy on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh because of his past. And what I mean by that is Kavanaugh has served as a judge for quite some time. He worked with Ken Starr to impeach Bill Clinton. So the reason why Republicans have fought against allowing Democrats to see all these documents ahead of time is because it would further complicate the confirmation process. That's why Mitch McConnell didn't really like him as a Supreme Court nominee. Now, with that said, Democrats finally got access to the documents that they asked for, but as Senator Harris said in that clip, they didn't really get it until 15 hours prior to the confirmation hearings beginning. So that's what's happening.
So, and there's layers upon layers of this. There are a great number of documents that were requested by the Democrats that are in the archives, and they won't get access to all of those. The Bush lawyers, because he worked for Bush, are withholding some. And then when they pass it on to Trump, Trump's people are withholding others and redacting it. That's why they have an incomplete record. The 42,000 they got in the middle of the night last night is not nearly all the records, but at least it's something extra. But they gave him no chance to look at it. How could you possibly read 42,000 pages, even if you had a team of people doing it, in 15 hours overnight? That makes no sense. These are the same Republicans who said, oh my God, the healthcare bill under Obama was so large, nobody got a chance to read it. Now they pull this stunt. So look, there are things that I can abide by and things I can't. People are all now concerned that there was too much fighting and interrupting in this proceeding. I'm not worried about that at all. They should fight. And Republicans fought. They fought tooth and nail to make sure that Merrick Garland never sat on the Supreme Court. They fought for a year. They did every legislative and procedural trick in the book to do that. So, I don't mind the Republicans fighting back against the Democrats in this proceedings. That's not an issue. What I cannot abide is people like Ben Sasse, and I've said some positive things about him and called him Classy Ben Sassy because of the things that he has been honest about in regards to Trump, and he did that again recently when in protecting the rule of law. But in this case, he said the question before us is, can Kavanaugh put aside his policy views, I'm going to quote here, and political preferences, and put them in a box marked irrelevant and set it aside every morning when he puts on that black robe. Come on, who are you kidding? You're telling us that Kavanaugh, who was one of the most conservative guys ever nominated to the Supreme Court, was a deeply political partisan operative under Bush and others, and on the Ken Starr investigation, is gonna put aside his political opinions? Please don't insult our intelligence. Whether you're Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat, everybody knows every one of those judges, both conservative and liberal, bring their political opinions to the court. Everybody knows that. It's preposterous and stupid to argue otherwise.
It is stupid to argue otherwise because there's already evidence as to how Kavanaugh will conduct himself. So the Federalist Society has promoted him, endorsed him, has included him on the list of potential Supreme Court nominees for Donald Trump. The Federalist Society is very clear about their objective. They want conservative activist judges. They believe that conservative politicians, primarily the President of the United States, should specifically look for and promote and nominate conservative judges who will carry out their ideology while they serve on the Supreme Court. So again, if this is a Federalist Society pick, which Kavanaugh is, then of course he's gonna be an activist judge. Of course he's gonna promote conservative ideology.
So I gotta jump in on that too, because look, the Republicans always say no more suitors. What does that mean? George H.W. Bush picked Souter, and it turned out that he wasn't as politically conservative as people thought he was, and he wound up siding with the liberals on the court a decent amount of the time. And so they're like, oh, we've got to make sure that never happens again. What does that mean? That clearly means I want a guy who is politically conservative. And why do you think that the right-wing evangelicals are celebrating Kavanaugh now and they're so excited by him? Because he's not going to overturn Roe versus Wade? No, they believe that he is going to overturn Roe versus Wade because that is his politics. Now, when it comes to judicial principles, well, Anna's right. He would have to be an activist judge, and he has shown in the past that he is, to overturn precedent. Now, Roe versus Wade is a precedent that is decades old, but Kavanaugh has shown in previous rulings that he would consider overturning that precedent. Why? He claims he's conservative judicially. If you're conservative judicially, you would not overturn that precedent. You would only do it if you're conservative politically. And you don't have to guess. In fact, in one of the documents that we got, there's a quote from Kavanaugh because he helped the Bush administration pick judges. So he said at the time, and Sheldon Whitehouse, Democratic senator, summarized it this way: he coached judicial nominees to just tell senators that, quote, this is now Kavanaugh's quote, that they will adhere to statutory text and they have no ideological agenda. And Whitehouse says fairy tales. So Kavanaugh literally coached other people to go and deceive senators by saying, oh my God, oh golly gee, I would never take politics into account. He's the one who wrote that playbook. So spare me your crocodile tears about politics. He was appointed because of politics, and he will be deeply political on the Supreme Court.
So let's talk about other individuals who protested Kavanaugh's confirmation at this first day of the confirmation hearings. There were women associated with the Women's March who decided to voice their opinions. Some did so in the form of protests during the confirmation hearings. They interrupted the confirmation hearings, which I thought was an effective way to get your point across. Now, women are disrupting this hearing today because our lives are at risk. Women will die if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, and that is a quote from Rachel O'Leary Carmona. She is the CEO of the Women's March. Some women showed up wearing Handmaid's Tale apparel or garb, which I thought was also an effective way to get the message across. These are women who are very much concerned with the confirmation of Kavanaugh leading to a destruction of reproductive rights in America, the violation of a woman's right to choose. And I also want to give you guys an example of what the scene was like when protesters interrupted the confirmation hearing. So I'm going to skip ahead to video 3. Let's take a look.
Okay.
This is a mockery and a travesty of justice. This is a travesty of justice. We will not go back. Cancel Brett Kavanaugh.
As the Supreme Court has put it, quote, unless the president can give his advisors some assurance of confidentiality, a president could not expect to. But you spoke about my decency and you spoke about my decency and integrity, and I think you are taking advantage of my decency and integrity. So.
So dozens of protesters did get escorted out of the room, some arrested. So there were loud, angry people there who didn't want this confirmation to go forward, and I can understand why.
So some of the Republicans in the hearings were saying, well, don't listen to the protesters or what the Democrats are saying. They're trying to pretend that Kavanaugh hates women and children, and of course that's not true. Now, wait a minute. So this isn't about, I don't know if, I would be surprised if he hated women and children. It isn't about hate in that sense. It's about what are your policies? And so is he against a woman's right to choose and hence a woman's decision to do what she wants with her body and to consult with her doctor and make that decision by herself? He is most definitively against that. He's completely against that. So that's not an exaggeration. Would he take rights away from women? 100%, he would. So it's, if you want to characterize that as being against women's rights and not hating women, okay, fine, that's your description. But he's going to take away women's rights. He's also going to potentially vote to eliminate things like Obamacare, which would take away, protections for contraception, let alone for all of us. The days of pre-existing conditions would be back. And there are a number of things that affect women and yes, children, that he would have a position that in our opinion would harm them greatly. So when the Republicans pretend that they're playing patty cakes and it's not gonna have an effect in your life, that's not true. It will affect your life, especially if you're a woman.
So Kavanaugh gave his speech today, his opening statements, and what stood out to me the most was what he chose to emphasize in his statements. And he wanted to kind of make a point about how he doesn't hate females. He actually has a lot of love for women. And part of the reason why is because he has daughters. Okay, fair enough. So he touched on his daughters quite a bit and talked about how one of his favorite things to do is serve as a coach for his daughters' basketball teams. Okay, but that's not enough. Like this effort to connect with us on this, hey, I have children, they happen to be girls, and I'm actually pretty cool to them. That's not enough to convince us that you wouldn't undo what progress has been made when it comes to reproductive rights. Same thing when it comes to concerns about his feelings toward minorities, particularly the African American community. He kind of answered those questions by saying, oh, back in the 1960s, my mom was a teacher in a predominantly black area.
Well, problem solved.
Who cares? We don't care. That doesn't matter at all. Like your personal touch on these issues don't matter. What matters is your voting record, your ruling record, I guess is a better way of putting it. How you've treated people personally in the past, what you think, how you think the country should move forward policy-wise. He's been pretty clear when it comes to his conservative leanings on these issues. And so his opening statements were so incredibly weak when it came to addressing the real concerns people have.
Well, look, I'll be harsh and I'll tell you why he does it. So the reason he does it is there was no internet in the past. So everybody on TV would come out and go, oh, that was a moving story about how he plays softball with his daughter. Okay, let's move on, right? Well, sorry, those talking heads on TV are borderline irrelevant at this point. So let me summarize what real progressives think about you and your softball habits. We don't care at all. So you're decent to your daughters. That's a low bar. Congratulations. And by the way, we'll have to take your word for it. But I believe you, I do, okay? Does that mean that you're gonna let them choose what to do with their body? No.
He might with his own daughters.
Oh yeah, with his own daughters, he'll pay probably to go outside the country or wherever they need to go or to a blue state, right? But are you going to allow the law to change so they do not have access to controlling their own bodies? Yes, yes you are. So don't give me pretty stories about softball. Look, it's not just about abortion either. One of the things that he would likely strip away if they go after the Affordable Care Act, as they have in the Supreme Court before, is the healthcare decisions that women get to make. The way that the law would change, bosses would get to make decisions for their female employees.
Oh, that'd be great.
Oh, but I play softball with my daughters. Later, I'll let their male bosses decide what kind of healthcare they can and can't get. Okay? No, we only care about policy. So spare me your schlock. That's for Joe Scarborough and the idiots on TV. We don't care about that at all. All we care about is what are you gonna do when you get on that court? And everything in your record now indicates that you will vote against women's rights. In fact, that's exactly why the right wing and the evangelicals are thrilled with your selection, because they think you're gonna take away Roe versus Wade. Why do you think they're so happy? So the lies are what drive me nuts. Republicans, just be honest about it. You campaigned on it all the time. You said in all your campaign ads, you said in all your speeches that you were hoping for a judge that'll take away Roe versus Wade. Now, when it's confirmation hearings, they're like, Roe versus Wade? I have no political opinion on that. Anybody have a political opinion on that? Oh, get the hell out of here. Everybody knows you're 100% lying. Kavanaugh and every Republican senator on there.
So there's a third part to this story that I want to touch on, and it actually has to do with a Republican who is being honest. So let's get to that. During the first day of Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings, there was one specific Republican who made a statement that really stood out to me. Jeff Flake, Senator Jeff Flake, who has been highly critical of Trump, mentioned that he somewhat sides with Democrats on his concerns in regard to Kavanaugh. So first, I'm gonna read you something that Move On tweeted because it has a lot to do with Jeff Flake's concerns. They tweeted a quote by Kavanaugh, and it goes as follows: "The country wants the president to be one of us, who bears the same responsibilities of citizenship that all share. But I believe that the president should be excused from some of the burdens of ordinary citizenship while serving in office." So Brett Kavanaugh was very clear in saying that he believes the president shouldn't have to deal with indictments and criminal investigations while he is serving in office. That is something that does not sit well with Democrats, and it also doesn't sit well with Republican Senator Jeff Flake. So Jeff Flake said the following during the confirmation hearing, quote, "Now, I know it has been brought up today that a lot of the concern on the other side of the aisle stems from the concern of an administration that doesn't seem to understand and appreciate separation of powers and the rule of law. I have that concern as well. If you just look at what was said just yesterday by the president, I think it's very concerning." So Senator Flake was specifically referencing a tweet by Trump, and the tweet that Trump put out was this: "Two long-running Obama-era investigations of two very popular Republican congressmen were brought to a well-publicized charge just ahead of the midterms by Jeff Sessions' Justice Department. Two easy wins now in doubt because there is not enough time. Good job, Jeff." So Trump has been attacking Jeff Sessions for refusing to do Trump's bidding, right? And Jeff Flake does not think that's okay. Democrats don't think that's okay. So that's the reason why Jeff Flake brought this up. The final part of his statement to Kavanaugh goes as follows: "Jeff Sessions has resisted pressure from the president to punish his enemies and relieve pressure on his friends. And many of the questions that you will get on the other side of the aisle and from me will be how you view that relationship, where you believe the Article I powers end and Article II powers of the administration begin."
So let me be clear about Kavanaugh's record and why this is so important and why I think this is one of the actual fruitful ways of going after this nominee. So, and I'll talk about the unfruitful ways as well. So he has three problems at a minimum, and one is about executive power. Now, Kavanaugh is the guy who was on Ken Starr's team investigating Bill Clinton. He was actually one of their biggest hatchet men. He was known as a political operative, and so the two things he pushed for was to investigate Vince Foster's suicide, after there had already been 5 investigations of it. The FBI had been very clear that it was a suicide, and Kavanaugh fed into the conspiracy theories and said, no, maybe Vince Foster was murdered by the Clintons. So cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. We're looking at this guy like he's a rational person, and everybody's talking about, oh, he's an intellectual. No, he believed that Vince Foster might have been murdered by the Clintons. He's a total lunatic in that regard, okay? So then he went on to aggressively grill Bill Clinton about his sex life. He sent him questions about what kind of oral sex he received. It was incredibly dirty. He then turns around afterwards and goes, no, we should never question any president.
But he
well,
said that
isn't that goddamn convenient?
And he said that during the Bush administration.
While he was serving for the Bush administration.
Exactly.
Now, he just gone through that term. And so after he goes after Clinton the most personal ways possible, then he works for Bush, and then he comes up with the opinion, oh golly gee, we shouldn't bother presidents. Are you kidding me? You were involved in the worst, most egregious case of that. But in the case of Donald Trump, is that one of the reasons he picked him? One of the few judges in the country who raised his hand and said, you should not question the president or bring any charges against them while he's president. That's basically raising your hand saying, Donald Trump, I will be corrupt for you. Now look, he didn't do it at the time of Trump. I want to be clear about that, and we always want to give you the right facts here, okay? But when Trump goes to look for a judge, he, out of all the judges in the country, there's a couple who say that the president shouldn't be bothered while he's in office. You shouldn't even ask him questions about anything he might have done wrong. Kavanaugh already raised his hand after being the exact opposite in real life.
Also,
right?
Remember, Mitch McConnell did not want Brett Kavanaugh to be Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee because of the fact that Brett Kavanaugh has such a long history, long past, and there are countless documents that Democrats can then look to question Kavanaugh and just kind of lengthen the process of these confirmation hearings. So Trump went against what McConnell wanted and went with Kavanaugh. Why? Because Trump has some sort of affection or admiration for Kavanaugh? You think he knew who Kavanaugh was prior to all this going on? No, he was looking for an individual who would be on his side should the Supreme Court ever weigh on what's going on with all of these investigations.
So there's three things that Trump cared about. He wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade so he can get evangelicals to vote for him in record numbers like they did in 2016. But a lot of judges fit that bill, a lot of them. He wanted people who were going to serve his Republican donors, but there's a ton of right-wing judges who vote with corporations almost no matter what. Kavanaugh is among them, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's only a couple of judges in the country who fit the first two descriptions and also say the president is basically above the law. Kavanaugh's position is, after he leaves office, then maybe you could do an investigation of him at that point, which will be incredibly late with stale evidence. And he's a lawyer, he knows that. That means in essence, you would put somebody on the Supreme Court who doesn't really believe in our system of government, who doesn't believe in checks and balances, says the president should never be checked above the law. Putting that guy in the Supreme Court on the issue of executive power alone is a danger to our democracy. That's a real issue. When the Democrats complain about the documents that weren't sent to them in time, they're right, and it is maddening. It was a dirty political trick of the Republicans. But overall, that's not gonna resonate enough with the American people. They're not gonna worry about documents. That's why the Republicans did it at the last minute, because they knew that that wouldn't resonate. But making the president above the law is incredibly important. The other two things that they can attack him on rightfully is corporate power. In the case of SeaWorld, a person dies. He says basically, to summarize, the employee, I don't think has rights to safety and health. Sad day for them. They must bow their heads to whatever corporation they work for. And so, of course, Republican donors love that. Trump loves that, but the American people don't love that. They don't want to be killed at work. And then have a Supreme Court judge says, sad day for you. You shouldn't have signed up for it. Corporations can do anything they want. The third thing, which Democrats definitely will not get into, but absolutely should, is Citizens United. This guy clerked for Kennedy. Kennedy wrote Citizens United. It was one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in American history. Make him answer the questions. Do you believe a corporation is a human being? Go ahead, raise your hand, because he's going to. He's going to say, well, they're people, they legally have the same rights as people. Actually, they argue that they have more rights than human beings, but at least make him say it. American people don't believe that. They think it's absolutely insane to say that corporations are people. And secondly, do they have unlimited rights to so-called speech, which the Supreme Court has said is money? In other words, they can just give any amount of money they want through campaign expenditures or independent expenditures. In other words, legally bribe our politicians. Are you in favor of that? And he's gonna say yes, because he's definitely in favor of Citizens United. He's not gonna say, oh, Kennedy made the wrong decision. There's no way he's gonna say that. And the country hates Citizens United. Republican voters don't like that corruption. Make him answer those questions.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, more news for you, including that Woodward story that we were promising earlier, so stick around.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Quick couple of things. Franco the Brave writes in, I just joined as an activist. I'm from Scotland and live in Ireland. Love TYT. Thank you, we appreciate it.
I only do the shoulder shimmy for the special ones.
That's right.
You know? And that's every member.
That's right. And remember, guys, one other thing about membership is that if we, and I've talked about this a lot, but if we're financially dependent on you guys, then we must serve you guys. That's been the thesis for all this time for this. You want that connection to you. You don't want it to other forces out there, okay? Kristen says, I just joined. I'm a single mom of 3 and don't have much of a hold on. And don't have much money, but I'm cutting into my coffee budget to give $10 a month. Thanks so much for all you do. Thank you, thank you. Look, in the post game, I'll talk more about some of the stories that I've had of people that are members and how I feel like we have a special responsibility to deliver for you guys. So let's talk about that then. Obviously, tyt.com/join to join. In fact, let me update you on that and I'll read you one last tweet and then we got 1,000 stories. So we started at 27,661. Anna asked for 30,000. Do we already have 30,000? The answer is no. Okay, but we do have 27,761. So 100 of you just signed up and you guys are amazing. Amazing, amazing. We love you guys. All right, now one tweet about, let me see here, about Jeff Flake, I want to read for you. Zappa fan says, Jeff Flake will vote to appoint for sure, I guarantee it. There's phones burning up in his office right this second. So yeah, I don't want you guys to mistake what we said there. Jeff Flake made really appropriate, good comments, but Jeff Flake does that all the time and then votes with Trump. So he will very, very, very likely vote for Kavanaugh no matter what he says today.
Right.
Okay, and that's what I mean by it's not just us, you guys are the Young Turks. Thank you for sending that tweet in because I want that kind of clarity.
Yes.
All right, let's go to the next story.
All right. Much of the news coverage today has to do with the fact that Brett Kavanaugh has begun the Senate confirmation hearings. However, there are federal judges that are being confirmed left and right with the help of Democratic senators like Chuck Schumer. So just to be clear, Donald Trump has successfully nominated and confirmed as many as 60 federal judges, which is a complete and utter disaster. But again, there are Senate Democrats like Schumer who have actually brokered deals with senators like Mitch McConnell to help Trump achieve his goal of confirming as many federal judges as humanly possible. So according to Vox, Chuck Schumer reached an agreement late Tuesday with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to fast track the confirmations of 15 Trump-nominated judicial picks. Now, according to Vox, a Senate Democratic aide tried to kind of downplay this by saying, oh, well, I mean, come on, these judges aren't really controversial, except they are. You think that Trump is gonna nominate fair federal judges who don't have conservative ideologies? Come on. So the Senate aide said that he emphasizes that Schumer's efforts enable Democrats to hit the campaign trail, giving red state Democrats a few extra days in their home states before coming back for Senator John McCain's memorial services, which just took place a couple days ago.
So think about how pathetic that is, guys, that they're confirming Trump nominees without a fight because they want 2 or 3 extra days of campaigning in their states.
Pathetic.
Okay, and if it was just that, it would be already horrible enough, but the reality is, the main thing that they use that time for is fundraising. So they gotta go talk to donors in that time, so they wanna hurry up and give Trump what he wants so they can make calls to donors.
Yep.
It's just the grossest thing you've ever seen. It's so bad that even Brian Fallon, who worked for Hillary Clinton, was very proud of that, etc., says that this is bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. He went on to say, it's hard to think of a more pathetic surrender heading into Kavanaugh hearings. Clintonites are saying it's a pathetic surrender.
But what, I mean, what would you expect from Chuck Schumer? Chuck Schumer is remarkably weak. Like I can't envision a Democrat weaker than him. Like, just to give you an example that's not related to federal judges or the Kavanaugh hearings. I mean, think about the way he screwed up the one opportunity that Democrats had to get protections, permanent protections for DACA recipients. That was over the whole debate about funding the government. Senate Democrats had leverage in that case. They could have prevented funding the government if Senate Republicans refused to offer a standalone bill to protect DACA recipients. And so Mitch McConnell goes to Schumer and says, I promise, after we fund the government, I will work with you to get protections for DACA recipients. And Chuck Schumer's like, McConnell promised. Oh yeah, how did that work out for you? How did that work out for you? There are still no protections for DACA recipients. Schumer is weak, and then they can't understand why left-leaning voters are turning their backs on them.
So look, it's so bad that a former Harry Reid aide said that Schumer is, quote, not a real leader. When Harry Reid staffers are throwing stones in your direction,
Jesus.
Boy, you're an incredibly weak leader. So I'm gonna tell you why he does it in a second, but understand what Harry Reid did, though. That was such a debacle. And I said it at the time, and as usual, Democratic apologists said, no, they're playing three-dimensional chess. They waited till the end of Obama's tenure, basically, to lift the filibuster on these kind of federal judges. The Republicans then lifted the filibuster on Supreme Court justices. Now, I said at the time, if you're gonna lift the filibuster on judicial appointments and executive appointments, do it in the beginning. Do it in the beginning. Instead, they let record-breaking obstruction happen under the Republicans. And right before they lost their majority, Harry Reid said, oh, let's lift the filibuster on these things so we can nominate 2 or 3 judges. When I said they're gonna lose their majority and then they're gonna let the Republicans run roughshod.
And that's exactly
And people
what
said,
happened.
no, Jake, you don't understand. You progressives don't understand. They're playing three-dimensional chess. Now we know for a fact, there was no three-dimensional chess. No, they did exactly what I warned about. They gave up their power right before, the power of the minority, right before they went into the minority. And so now the Republicans are steamrolling them. And Schumer goes, oh, golly gee, there's nothing I could do. And I told you that they would take it away from the Supreme Court appointments in a second. And incredibly foolish people who know nothing about current day politics said, oh, no. That's a bridge too far for Republicans. They won't take away the filibuster from Supreme Court nominees. They took it away immediately for Gorsuch. Come on, stop being so purposely stupid, because it's now insulting our intelligence. So why do they actually do things that they know are maniacally stupid and weak? Because, oh my God, we got to get the red state Democrats to win. So forget all the other Democrats, but there's a Democrat in Indiana and North Dakota and West Virginia, and they think it's a brilliant strategy to be Republican light.
That's right.
And so because of that, we're gonna cater everything to them. We're gonna say, hey, don't worry, Joe Manchin and Joe Donnelly get to say, oh yeah, they cleared the way for Trump nominees. But you just screwed over not only all the other Democrats, but your messaging overall. So what's driving victories today? It's voter turnout. It's not only weak and stupid, it's the wrong strategy. Even if all you cared about, like they think, oh, Schumer's like, oh, they don't understand. They know we have red state candidates in Missouri, and we're even worried about our seat in Florida, and Trump actually won this. We know that, you moron. Of course we know that. But what you don't know is you never set up our framing. Hey, this is why Democrats are right. This is why progressives are right, because you're so busy catering to Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and saying, oh, look, they get to brag that they gave Trump everything that he wanted. You fool, you're suppressing voter turnout in the whole country. Then who wants to come and vote for these weak, pathetic senators that are supposed to represent them on the Democratic side?
Right, and then they don't understand, again, when Democratic voters turn their backs on Democratic leadership in both the House and the Senate. By the way, one other thing I want to quickly mention is, look, they've already tried this strategy back in 2014 when they lost control of, it was the House. Yeah, when they lost control of the House. You had a number of Democratic incumbents, Democratic candidates who decided, oh, I'm in a district that isn't as solidly blue as I would like, so I'm gonna run as a Republican-like, conservative-like candidate and see how that works out. bunch of people got voted out of office? Because they have a conservative candidate they can vote for. Why would they vote for conservative light?
Look, they've been doing it for the last 10 years, more than that. And how's it worked out? They've lost over 1,000 seats across the country, and they're still using the same stupid, wrong strategy because they get paid not to learn those lessons because their donors want the same thing as the Republicans. So last thing on this, from my perspective, the thing that matters, look, these nominees matter a lot. So far, Trump has gotten so many more confirmed than Obama did in the same period of time. And he goes around bragging about it and says, see, I'm strong. God damn it, why are you helping him like that? But secondarily, and even more important, is what are they gonna do with Kavanaugh? This gives you a sense of the surrender that they are already planning. And so if they think all the Republicans are gonna hold, they're immediately going to, quote unquote, release the Donnellys and the Manchins of the world, those red state Democrats, to vote with Kavanaugh, because they think that's a brilliant strategy to win in those races. So they're planning that surrender as we speak. Do you know what Kavanaugh's polling at? You know Trump's in the 30s, and the whole country hates him, but that apparently did not get into their heads. But in Indiana, he won in double digits. That was in 2016, and he was running against Hillary Clinton. I know you love her, but the rest of the country hates her. So, but you didn't learn that lesson. So they think, oh no, Trump must be really popular. I mean, he beat Hillary Clinton, and I love Hillary Clinton. Right? So no, he's not polling at those numbers in those states today. But Kavanaugh, is he popular? He's polling at 37%. I don't know if you guys still understand numbers, Democrats in Washington. 37% is a terrible, terrible number, especially where a person who's a Supreme Court nominee has not had attack ads against them, has not gotten any negatives against them, and is pretending to be nonpartisan. Usually there's a lot more respect for judges. Usually they poll way higher than politicians. He's at 37%. For God's sake, fight. For the first time in your life, fight. But likely, as usual, they will surrender. Then they'll say we didn't have a choice. Then they'll say, yay, we helped the red state Democrats be more like Republicans. Then they'll lose, and then they'll go, oh, golly gee, we should have gone more right wing.
Yeah, I know, at the end of everything, that's usually their takeaway. We should have gone more right wing.
And the final part will be like, golly, we really don't understand why progressives are upset.
It's amazing. All right, well, when we come back from our break, we'll show you someone who actually is a fighter, unfortunately. And he's a fighter against Jeff Sessions, which I would usually be in favor of, but in this context, not so much.
So guys, get the whole show, tyt.com/join, because those 3 stories are amazing. What Trump did, and he buried himself with that tweet. I'm gonna explain why. And the ones I promised you earlier, Kaepernick, there's parts of that story that nobody's talking about, why it's so important. And then the Woodward book is unbelievable. All that when we come back.